As you probably already understood, we'll record today's meeting, and if it works properly for all of us, we may use it in addition for future webinars or web-based meetings with students, mainly from Bulgaria, and also those who are studying rights connected with Bulgarian children. So let me take my focal points for today's meeting, just to have them here. I suppose we have around 40 minutes or even more. I have more, so if you have more questions, please don't hesitate to raise them. And I suppose it will be much more better to raise questions than write notes. So I will try just to make a framework after legal basement in which we'll spread our discussion, but I will try to focus on more practical issues and more debatable issues, just to be more useful for the challenges that you are facing here studying in Bulgaria. All the countries you are coming from, except Japan, are actually countries that are facing migrant challenges. So Bulgaria is not an exclusive country that is facing these challenges as a country. However, when we are talking about children, there is always a different point of view. So today we will talk about the children in migration. And this will be the only focus I will put in front of you. And all the questions I will answer will be dedicated to children's rights. I'm just not an expert in adults now. Maybe if I answer any questions connecting adults issues, I won't be so correct. So, as I was already presented in front of you, my name is Ofelia Kaneva. I'm a chairperson of the State Agency for Child Protection. Why do you have me, and why don't you have someone from Migrant Service or from the Ministry of Interior or from Border Police? Do you know what State Agency for Child Protection is? Have you ever heard about that? It's the central coordination body in our country that coordinates the entire policy for children, that controls the rights of the children, and also is responsible for the support of the professionals that are working with and for children. In that case, when we're talking about children, you always have something to talk about with me. So that's why I was invited to talk in front of you today, because migrant children are composing different points of view, and they are all composed under the administration of the State Agency for Child Protection. Just to be sure that we'll understand all the underlying issues that we will discuss today, I would like to ask another question. Do you know how many bodies responsible for children we have in Bulgaria? Bodies, official state bodies responsible for children, do you know? Have you ever heard? Do you know, for example, in your country, in Germany?
Yeah.
How many?
It's a good question. I know we have the legislative branch making laws, and there's the Ministry of School, Ministry of Children. I think in some way everybody is related to the children's rights.
Mm-hmm.
Even the Ministry of Traffic or something like that, small people rights in traffic is also a matter of that, and I don't think there's like a single central body that is coordinating everything.
You don't have?
I don't think.
In Bulgaria we have. This is not a proper and very often met practice at state level. State agencies for child protection are existing in only 17 countries in the world. One of them is Bulgaria. In most of the countries that ratified the Convention on Children's Rights, do you know how many countries ratified it? Or how many didn't? Have you ever raised this question in front of you? Only 2 countries didn't ratify it, although all the countries signed it. This is the most supported international act in our history, this Convention on Children's Rights. So all the countries that ratified are welcome to have centralized bodies. So probably in each and every country you're coming from, you have an administration that is engaged to be this central coordinating body on children's rights, you probably have a national council which coordinates the ministries, because each and every child is engaged with different issues, right, in the different age that grows, etc., etc., including migrant children. Okay, in Bulgaria we have 10, like the 10 fingers of our caring hands. And these are Ministry of Labor and Social Policy, Ministry of Interior, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Culture, Executive Agency for Social Assistance, and each and every mayor of municipality. Why this is important? Because when we are talking about Bulgarian practice, you will have to know how to coordinate the information which you will hear today from me, connecting the issue coming from the migrant child with the reality for the rest of the children or for all the children in Bulgaria. Okay, enough for the bodies. How many were they? Thank you. Okay, you're listening. I prepared some materials that I will leave to you, not to lose the time in them. Part of them is the international framework, the legislation that it will be very interesting for you to know, to follow, and not to miss when we are talking about migrant children. I will just mention which conventions and directives and regulations are important not to be missed. Of course, the Convention on the Rights of the Child, we've already mentioned, it's crucial always when we talk about children. This is the key point in each and every step we decide to take and in each and every decision we are producing. Convention on the Status of Refugees, this is also called Geneva Convention, you probably passed through it. Also, European Convention on Human Rights and Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union. These are at the highest level. Maria, I prepared resumes for you. I'm sure the students will need them later on, so you will have them. Okay. Yep.
And we are working on internet, so you may send me
perfect
materials if you...
I prepared some, and I also prepared some links for you. I'm sure they will be useful for you at European level mainly. National, of course, but European also. For Japan, I will look something in addition at Asian level. I'm sure our partners from Asian European Union will give a hint later on, so I will just need a few more days about that, and thank you for the understanding.
But you should know that Tiger is very active. He's the only one who has written to me 3 times demanding materials.
Aha, okay.
So we have to appreciate.
Okay. So, directives 2011-95 of the European Parliament and the Council. Directive 2013-32 of the European Parliament and the Council. 2013-33 and Regulation of the European Union 604 issued in 2013, and also Regulation of the European Union 603 from 2013. Yes, and also Regulation number 1077 from 2011. So this is the international framework which we should consider and reconsider always when we are talking about migrant children, also in Bulgaria. I'm not going to lose any more time on it because you will have it in the notes that I prepared for you. What about the national framework? Which are the laws that we should respect when we are talking about migrant children? Do you have any clues, any ideas? In general, not concrete names, but in general, the scope which covers the migrant children in Bulgaria. Could it be, for example, the law on education of children? Do you think? Could be, or But what is important for Bulgaria is that each and every child on our territory is treated like a Bulgarian child, roughly said. So it doesn't matter is it a migrant child or is not a migrant child, or it was just a child born here in Sofia. All the rights that the state ensures and protects and supports are guaranteed, no matter how old the child is, where she or he comes from, and where goes to. Most of the migrant children are not staying in Bulgaria. For example, the numbers, if they're interesting for you, for 2016 are 2,772 unaccompanied children entered Bulgaria, and 3,800 accompanied entered Bulgaria. The previous year, 2015, there were more than 7,000. More than 4,000 unaccompanied and more than 7,000 accompanied. For this year, 2017, look at the numbers, they're 10 times less. We have, for the 10 months, January to October, we have 389 unaccompanied children and only 696 accompanied. And most of them didn't stay in Bulgaria. For example, for the last year, only 39 unaccompanied children decided to stay in Bulgaria and to continue their living on Bulgarian territory. For this year, we will analyze the data a little bit later in January, but still this number allows us really to provide highly qualified care and not to escape the responsibilities that we have to migrant children. Each and every migrant child, when enters the country, is put in the record. In which administration? Do you know? Of course, in the state agency for migrants, for refugees, and when it's a child, in our agency, state agency for child protection. So the blonde lady, the wonderful blonde lady at the last line here, Denica, she's part of the team that is working for migrant children. And we have a database by names, by age, by sex, by country of origin, and by story of each and every child that enters our country. This is a tool which other countries are not using often because it's quite researchable. It needs a lot of time, a lot of efforts really to understand what the story of the child is, where his or her family is, and how this child is connected with the other relatives that he or she is recognizing. You've probably met different stories about migrant children in your own life, and you know that children are very often changing their names when they're passing the country borders. Do you know that? So a boy at 10 years old is entering Bulgaria as Mehmet and is exiting Bulgaria as Orhan, and then is entering Serbia as Yozgyu, for example, or something like that, which makes very hard the coordination with the other countries. That's why it's needed when we keep this database to keep it in many items, in many, what is the word in English, in many... Faces? Not always faces, but because faces are changing quite often when children are growing so fast. I understood. Facets. Yeah, okay. So, of course, data I mentioned already is kept in our database, and if you're interested, I could give you precise information what are the data we are keeping and how we are transferring it through the other countries. I suppose you'll be interested to visit the Office of United Nations about refugees.
So we have promised them, yes. If you assist us to do that, to meet the liaison with the Commission representative, will be very good.
Okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but they wanted very much to meet real refugees or candidates for asylum seekers or humanitarian status.
Okay, then we have to ask the people, do they want to meet you? Right, because this should be bilateral wish, not just one-side wish. I'm sure this could this could be organized, and it's not so hard to be organized. We just have to have in mind the Christmas vacations. So maybe to start with the UN quarter here.
They will be here by the end, at most by the end of January, am I right?
Okay, so let's try with December to make a meeting with Mr. Leroux, Matthijs Leroux, who is the official representative of the United Nations here, about the refugees. How was the official name in English?
UNHCR.
HCR. Okay, UNHCR. Okay. Okay, this is a promise, colleagues, this is a promise I just gave in front of the students, so please help me to keep it. And let's try to organize it for the next week. Yep, before Christmas.
Brilliant. And if it is a time then at which my students have their lectures, I will try to organize that with my colleagues.
Which
So
are
we
the
must specify
most proper days
Yes?
and periods of the day which are suitable? Mondays are perfect? So let's try for the next Monday. Next Monday, please. Okay? Okay, we will ask, can you have the information till tomorrow? Is it possible to have the answer till tomorrow? Okay? Yep. And about the rest, well, we have 3 centers, accepting centers in the country, and 1 transferring center, so all 4 objects. Which one of them is in Sofia, the rest are in the country. I suppose you'd prefer the one in Sofia, which is the biggest one, but it's also the most civilized one. So I'm not sure that this will be the best example that you will see, because they are all different, the examples we have. Still, it will be something to see. Then we will have to talk with the State Agency for Refugees, with Mrs. Petya Parvanova, and to try to organize it for January. Let's try. Okay, for January. Okay. At least this I could do for you. So, are you interested on the national legal framework or not that much? Mainly, yes. Okay. So, the first important thing to remember is that all the legislation that is targeting children is also targeting migrant children when they are on the territory of Bulgaria. So, each and every act we have for children in Bulgaria is also reliable here. And when we are talking about education, of course, we are looking at a new legislation on education, which I don't know how it is set in English. We have a very new act for primary and preschool education, right? For children up to 16. Yes, okay. It's obligatory for all the children up to the age of 15, and it also ensures 100% state guarantees for all the children that would like to continue their education till they finish with high school. But it's obligatory at least to finish the basic school. Basic is the age of 14 plus.
According to the Constitution, it is 16, but it does not concern with any kind of educational degree. They might stay at the age of 16 in the first class, which is ridiculous, but it might happen.
I'm trying to use my English notes, but I put my remarks over the Bulgarian text, which confuses me a little bit. So, the law for child protection is the other law that is very important when we are talking about migrant children, because these are children in need of special care. Also, the law that is connected with the помогнете ми, момичета, with trafficking, and also the law for social assistance or social protection, and of course the law for the state budget, as this all should be covered financially by us. So at legislative level, the upper level in the state, it is not so hard to be organized, as Bulgaria, being part of the convention, ratifying the convention for children, agreed that each and every child on its territory actually could rely on each and every law that is created for children. What is important to focus when we're talking on migrant children is under the law. It's at the level of rules of implementation, in the level of cooperation between the agencies, ministries, and local service providers, and also good practices in the public-private partnership. I suppose one of the secrets of the success is the good partnership between the public and private representatives. So we have special procedures for this partnership, which is also supported by states or by the state budget, with funds coming from the state budget, and also European Union funds together with funds that are established by UN. Coordination of this public and private partnership, when we're talking about children, should be licensed. The service providers should be licensed by the State Agency for Child Protection. This is a special procedure which engages the country with more strict control and more strict methodical support to the service providers at terrain. So we are insisting each and every NGO, for example, to pass special procedure before it's allowed to work with children. If you're interested on this approach, you could look at the official site of the State Agency for Child Protection, sacp.government.bg. You will have it in the printed materials as well, so you're not going to miss it. And to check exactly where licensing, it's on the first page, very centralized licensing, you will see. It's a strict procedure that it's followed by the controlling body that we have in our administration. And each and every provider is put under very strict control on a daily basis. And we also use this licensing procedure to adequately analyze the instruments and the tools that the state is rising through the year. We also establish a coordinating mechanism between the institutions, because when we are talking about children in general, coordination is in our hands, in the hands of the State Agency for Child Protection. But when we are talking about migrant children, and they're in such a dynamical migration, actually, we need a different type of cooperation. So this is a new mechanism that was established just 3 months ago, and it's expected to be adopted by the Council of Ministers in the beginning of the year. Its main purpose was to give tools in the hands of the professionals that are working on terrain. What do we miss? We miss the terrain. Who is next to the child when it enters the country? Who is the first person the child sees? Policeman, border police, social worker, or services from the migrant office? Do you have an idea? Maybe the border police, maybe the social worker. If, for example, smugglers or people who are using these migration waves are using children to pass quicker, or out of the regulation, they're using children very often for this, to escape from the regulations. So maybe it's a social worker, maybe it's not the border police. But the first person the child sees is official from the state, someone from the state. So it's very important, these state people, to speak the same language and to communicate directly between each other. Otherwise, it will be a mess, and the child will be the victim, although we all are working to support the child. It will be a victim because we are not communicating with each other. So this regulation was agreed in the very beginning of its establishment to be a very dynamic act, and it will be dynamically changed in each 3 months after it's once adopted by the Council of Ministers. I have no idea how the regulations work in your country, but 3 months for each country is a very, very short period, and this is a very, very dynamic change that the state is engaged with, which means that we have to put behind the scenes something that is not visible for the children, very strict administrative approach to allow really these 3 months changes to be adequate and really to work for the children. And having in mind these waves that are coming and going, last year was dynamically growing, this year is not dynamically growing, and every time different needs are coming. Syrian people are having one needs, Afghan children are having other needs, depends where the people are coming from. We should always rely on the best coordination. Why? Why not just following the strict rules that are existing in each and every country? We have laws that are sometimes working for 100 years, like in Britain. Who was coming from Britain? No one?
We don't have anybody from
Good. Because they are relying on laws that were established 100 years ago.
to take all the blame.
Okay. Why not? Why not? Why don't we rely on these strict rules that are existing already for years and they are working? Why do we need different approach when we are talking about migrant children?
Because, like you said, it's a dynamic, like the migrant children there's no constant flow of migrant children coming into the country.
Yeah, but it's
a dynamic approach, so there should be a dynamic law too.
Then what is the difference between children from 20th century and children from 21st century? Children from 21st century are digital children, and the children from previous century are not digital children. But they are treated by the same laws. Most of the times laws will not change, with few exceptions. Why here we need a different approach? Why we need to be more dynamic? One of the answers...
Our society changed. We are trying to be more like empathetic towards their children and so on.
Okay.
We want to fulfill their maybe special needs.
Special needs actually is one of the parts of the answer. Best interest of the child is the key of the answer. This is one of the key principles in the convention. The best interest of the child should be protected, provided, ensured, and guaranteed by every professional. Yep.
Who says, what is the best interest of the child? Is it subjectively, is it objectively, or the criteria for the best interest? And it's like a really broad term.
How do we ensure it? That's right. How do we ensure the best interest? You understand it in one way, I understand it in a different way. I believe that studying in your own country is better than studying in Bulgaria, because Germany is a more developed country, Bulgaria is not. Why do you think it's in your interest to come in Bulgaria, just for example? How do we measure the best interest of the child?
That's my question to you.
I will answer. I'm just trying to reach the answer together with you, if this is possible. Do you think that we have in the legislation some items that may help us to be sure that best interest of children is always part of the decision that we take? We are obliged to, but how do we do it? Did you ever read somewhere that children are asked, and we are obliged to ask children before we take the decision about the children? Do children participate in the decisions that we take for them? Where are the children in the decision-making process? That is trying to support their rights and to ensure their rights. Are they object or they are subject of the decision? Children are not adults, okay, agree, but still they are human beings. Is it fair to make decisions without taking into account children's opinion? No, not really. Then it should be a part of the law, right? And if it is not part of the law, it should be part of the procedures at least. And I think it's one of our obligations, like for you, for future professionals, for me, present one, to ensure in each and every step that we take, no matter what we are talking and what we are working, where we are working for and to children, it's our engagement to ensure that children were part of this decision and they've been asked in a proper way, not just asked like that. Well, this is something I'm very proud, because Bulgaria has this special regulation. Since 2003, in the special law for protection of children, you have a special article, it's Article 12 in our law, which says that children's opinion should be taken into account when the state decides about any policy issues targeting children. Since 2008, we have a national consulting body only with members only children. That is part of the Council of Ministers. This is a unique form at such a high level. I mean, each and every country, each and every developing and developed country has different practices and examples of consulting the decisions with children. In Bulgaria, this is part of the Council of Ministers. And since 2016, no decision for children was taken before it was consulted with the Council of Children. After that, it was allowed to the Council of Ministers to adopt, to decide finally. So this is something that is really important when we're talking about migrant children as well, because migrant children are not really part of the population of the country yet, still they are children on our territory, and somehow, if we are so proud, being so democratic about children's voice and opinion, we should somehow ensure that migrant children are also part of the decision-making process targeting migrant needs. So since September this year, the Council of Children initiated themselves a new procedure for the voice of migrant children. They even came before the Council of Ministers with their own decision. They made a kind of self-regulation in the framework of the Council of Children. And now each and every migrant child is allowed and is invited to be part of the members for 6 months, not longer. The rest are for 2 years. The only condition is to speak English, because we somehow have to find a way to communicate directly, and most of the Bulgarian children are English-speaking children. Large generations at least are. So this is their decision. You have, in the materials I prepared, the text of children's decision, and this text is already part of the official procedure. So now each and every action plan of the government, each and every rules of regulation, each and every national program for implementation of strategy, program, whatever at state level, will have to be agreed not only with the Council of Children, but also with the voice of the migrant children. And I'm really very much looking forward to hear the first opinion of migrant children in Bulgaria. Because last week, for example, I was raised in front of the Council of Europe just to explain that we do not keep migrant children in prisons here in Bulgaria. I know the names and the stories of all the migrant children that decided to stay in Bulgaria. I know them by name. And they are all not in prison. They are all in social care, residential care services, in social protection area, in foster family even. They are not in prisons. However, before we have the voice of children in front of us, we won't be able to actually lead any active policy toward migrant children. And we will not be able actually to fulfill their expectations if we don't know what their expectations are. We could only guess about that, and legislation is exactly that, guessing the needs, but not interiorizing the needs actually. That's why this is a new challenge for Europe, mainly for Europe. Well, for Asia, processes are more dynamic. They are mainly based on the labor market needs, not that much poorness, not that much wars like in Europe now. But for Europe, this is a huge challenge now. It's quite a new challenge, and we are all new in that. We are all new in finding good practices. We are all new in finding good solutions. That's why it's needed not to be strict in this typical approach with the law and rules of implementation once per 5 years, that's all. Maybe action plan once per year, better once per 3 years. When we are talking about migrants, especially when we are talking about migrant children, 3 months is the term that Bulgaria decided to have for changing the legislation, and I think this is important. Let me just have a very quick view of something that I may miss on the legal framework. This is more on the implementation stage. Maybe if you raise question on it, I will put more info on it. Okay, and the time is running, so I promise to be a little bit shorter. What did we learn today? Yep.
What is the decision-making process? Like, when can a child decide he will stay in Bulgaria? Because I said, like, it's the child's decision to stay in Bulgaria or not. I really can't imagine, like, an 8-year-old making the decision.
If it is accompanied or if it's unaccompanied, when it's accompanied, of course, we're looking for the decision of the adults that are accompanying the child, and we are actually planning our work after the decision of the adults. When the child is unaccompanied, that someone that is adult should take legally the decisions for this child, and this really makes the approach quite different. Of course, we have to find a legal representative of this child just to be sure that if the child needs school or special medical care, etc., someone will be able to sign the papers at least, and to put in action the action plan that the state ensures by the state budget and by the state administration. So this happens with few states. First, the child enters the country, for example, and meets the border policeman. The border policeman asks questions, of course, and is trying to understand what's going on. Most of the children are not, unaccompanied children are not speaking good English, so we are trying to ensure interpreters from different languages. Well, in most of the times we succeed almost immediately. Sometimes it needs about a day, 24 hours to find this special language interpreter from Sofia to reach Harmali, for example. This is the Turkish border. So we find the interpreter, then this interpreter talks with the child, and part of this talk, part of this conversation is a social worker from the nearest social care office. The social care offices are one of the official bodies that are responsible for children's rights in Bulgaria, so we rely really on the opinion of the social worker together with the opinion of the border police. In these special cases, when child is not accompanied, we mainly rely on the social worker opinion. Together with that, we are trying to see, depending on the specific individual case of the child, where exactly we could provide care for this child almost immediately. Should it be sent to a transfer center or refugee center first, while we are trying to administrate the process that goes behind his or her individual story, or we could immediately look for social residential care. It again depends on the case, individual case. If the case is good enough to go directly to a social residential care, then we connect with the local administration, local municipalities, and we are trying to find local representative that will be official representative of the child, someone that mayor decides who will be. It is usually someone from the local administration. Well, this is something that works for the administration. I'm not sure it works for the child, so it's debatable. And I suppose it will be changed in 2018. It's debatable in each and every European country. This is the approach that usually Europe is using. The local administration decides who will be the official representative of the unaccompanied child. So if it goes to a center for refugees, of course we are trying to ensure that this child will have special child area where will be settled for a while the administration of the state agency for refugees is taking care about the papers. Once papers, this doesn't take a lot of time, being honest. We're talking about, well, the longest period is about a few weeks, not longer, while we are really settling the child somewhere. And then we are looking for a school, for doctor, general practitioner that will take care about this child and all the other needs. And in case the child has other special needs, we're also engaging these other administrations that are needed in that.
Do you also
eligible psychologists for this child?
Yeah.
Because most of them usually are in state of shock.
That's right. And that's why I said that public-private partnership is one of the keys of the success when we are welcoming children here on our territory. Of course, in most of the social units that state provides at local level, the Agency for Social Assistance is covering 100% of the territory of the country. So the administration covers the territory. In most of the offices, they have, as part of the state teams, they have psychologists. But this is not enough. Sometimes this is state servant. He has working time and not thousands but hundreds of cases taken by the state. Sometimes you need one psychologist for 3 days, 24 hours per day, and this is needed now. It won't be needed next week. That's why we need the support of the NGOs that are working on terrain, and that's why we have, as I mentioned in the beginning, these special financial tools to support the NGOs to work on terrain and to be more flexible and to initiate games with the children, to initiate camps between children from Bulgaria and children that will be Bulgarians maybe or will not be, but they will be Europeans. And we all need to be friends of Europe. These children, is very important to feel like Europeans because they will live in Europe. And this is part of the child communication that we have to support, and we have to initiate circumstances to happen. So psychologists are very insistingly needed in each and every public-private partnership we're establishing where centers for refugees are existing mainly, and mainly in the areas where most of the refugees are actually living, like in Sofia. Most of the people are living in Sofia. So NGOs here on the territory of the capital are very actively supported, not just administratively, but also financially, to keep psychologists, and not only psychologists, also art therapists they are using. This works pretty well with children that do not speak English, missing their mother, father, brothers, sisters, are trying really to understand what's going on. I found a very good example talking with one child. The child was 8 or 9 years old and was asked, "Are you a superhero?" And he answered, it was a boy, he said, "Yes, I am, because every day I'm in a different country, in a different situation, facing a new challenge and making new friends, like a superhero." Migrant children are superheroes in that point of view, and we need super professionals to support, to be able to work with superheroes, not only psychologists, but also other dedicating people that sometimes really are not seeing their own children to be able to help migrant children. And State Agency for Child Protection is also engaged to initiate methodological instruments to support professionals working on terrain. So I'm really observing, even personally, not only with the help of the team of the state agency, observing the needs of these professionals, and I'm initiating meetings with most of them, or at least with their representatives, on monthly basis, just to be sure that when they need support, they have someone to call and to ask. One of these instruments we are keeping, which is established to be support for children, but now works very actively to support professionals, is the national telephone line. It's the European number 116 111. It's the same in all the countries you're representing. You could check in your own country. So 116 111 is the number which works, which everyone could call. It works 24/7 and could ask, "I have a migrant child here. The neighbor just brought it in front of my house and left it. What could I do?" And you will receive an answer. You don't need to wait till 8:30 in the morning and to ask questions what to do with the child, since it becomes 8:30 in the morning. We also are working on online correspondence instrument, which will be 116.111.bg. This should be open next year, where online children and professionals could also receive support, and also materials, blanks of papers, etc. templates of papers.
How digital are migrant children?
Bulgarian migrant children are digital children. I know that in Italy, for example, most of the children that are entering Europe through Italy are not digital, but Bulgarian are digital.
In case they are in a process of trafficking in children, or they're enslaved, and you try to reach their opinion, what should be the procedure to overcome the influence from factors that are not to be distinguished by the state officials?
This was the question I raised myself, not just in front of me. How to be more efficient, trying to ensure children's rights and making them more secure. Digital regulations here, of course, matter, but not only. Social networks are used both by the state and by the traffickants as well. So this is an issue on which we have to debate longer. And we only have some hints, but not all the decisions. Maybe one of the secrets is to ask the children. Sometimes they are much more fruitful in their advices than we could be in our thinking and analyzing the issues. One of the answers may be just really to keep child-friendly information about everything that we are doing. I think we owe a lot to children about that. Everything that we are doing is still not child-friendly enough. So although we are so prepared to support children and to welcome children, children do not know that. And actually their active participation won't be ensured that, well, they don't know how to rely on it and where to ask and how to understand what's the next step. And every adult is getting nervous when it's not aware of the next step. You could imagine if you're a child and you're alone and you don't know what's going on, of course you will be nervous, of course you will be aggressive, of course you will be stressed, and psychologists won't be able to help you if they don't give you the precise information. What's next? Here we have a lot to work, and Bulgaria is not the only not good example here. We all have bad examples in child-friendly information. Brochures, leaflets, things like that, they are too typical. Of course we have them. We should have them. We report at the end of the year that we have them. How many brochures did you use while you're in Bulgaria? Exactly. And you're not a child, you're a young person, but not a child. If you're a child, you use not zero, minus something you will use.
What about Italy, Andrea? Yeah.
I know that you have wonderful brochures in southern Italy in different languages. It's beautiful. I saw plenty of brochures that you've produced. But I think that it's not enough. But what you did is, in your country, is that you really tried to support the local community to accept the migrant children. This was a huge task your country faced. And I think now, after a few years' challenges passing through, now you have good results. Local community is okay with migrant children, not with the adults, but is okay with the children. Children are accepted. This was a special step that you had to take, and it was hard for Italians to take it. Although Italy was always a symbol of welcoming territory, this was too much for you and you needed some time. But the time was given, and now I think you're getting better. You could advise French guys, for example, with your approaches. French guys are working in a very different way. They are working more like Germans, for example. Everything is pre-ordered. In the very beginning, the state decides where, in which region, how many people could be accepted. And the region knows in advance. Even the people are not here, the region already knows. So it's very well planned in the very beginning. Maybe plenty of questions questions could be raised, where is the individual wish of each and every person. But this is how, for example, Germany, the state Germany decides the local challenges that will rise, that rise in Italy, for example. For Bulgaria, we don't have this regulation at local level. Maybe it's good for us that the number of people that are entering are not that much, but still we are facing similar problems like the Italians with the local community. Local authorities are not always welcoming migrant people, although migrant children are welcomed here. Well, Bulgarians we've been always very supporting to young people. Bulgarian policy has always been very active to children and very supportive and very widespread when we're talking about children. So it's not so hard to work for migrant children. It's not the same when we're talking about adults. Okay, would you like to summarize? If you have more questions, we could continue. So for today, you have the international legal framework. I just mentioned the titles, and you have them written here, so you could have them, check them yourselves, and see what is the story behind each convention, each recommendation, and each directive at European and not only European level, at the level of United Nations. What else? You have the national legislation base. The key important thing is that national legislation targeted children is also relevant to migrant children, and the only difference is that when we are talking about migrant children, Bulgarian state decided to change, to be flexible and to change the regulations at operative level in each 3 months. So this is important to be known. And what else did we learn today? What are the key words that we should take out of this room from today's meeting? Thank you. Best interest of the child. Participation of children. The participation in the decision-making process. I think it's crucial to be remembered. What else?
Common approach within this state of issues.
Yep. Perfect coordination.
Needs of children.
Needs of children. Good. Okay. I hope it was efficient for you to meet me today. For me it was efficient because I was watching your faces and I was wondering, am I clear in what I'm saying? Is it interesting what I'm talking to you? Well, I hope the reason that you see me for the first time, and you may never see me, already makes me interesting for you. However, the part that you will need for your preparement, for your studying, you will have on paper. You also have some links that, together with my team, we prepared for you, and some good practices from our practice in Bulgaria, and practices that we met, and also some, just let me see, here. And some practices of our partnering organizations, which may be of use in your practice in the future. You also have very short resume of report of FRA. This is the European agency. You have its website here in the materials we prepared. You also have the website, the official website of the State Agency for Child Protection, where you could look for each and every legislation, framework, or coordinating mechanism that is connected with children's rights and children cases. I forgot to tell you that we are not only responsible for the coordination of the child policy in Bulgaria and also engage with the control of the child right, but we are also the contact point for the international cases on children. That's why migrant children, being part of them, international cases are part of our special engagement as a state agency. You also have a few links to legislation databases which you could use for your works, reports, etc. And you have some materials printed, issued by the European agency. It's here. European Union Agency for Fundamental Rights. They are in Bulgarian, but I printed them because you could easily find them in the website of FRA, Fundamental Rights Agency. And they could be very useful for you, for your preparement for future law studies that you will have to follow. So Maria will leave all this to you. I'm sure you will be able to copy. You have enough copies, I think. And maybe you will need, maybe you will also need the statistical data I prepared. Do you plan to have the... Yeah, okay. So would you like to write these 10 bodies for children if you are talking for children's rights in the future? This will be useful just to know where to look for information, to write them here. Do you think will be useful? Okay.
Yes,
and this will be...
They will copy those.
And this will be the end, I promise. Okay. So we said how many? 7? Thank you. Okay, 10. And we said State Agency for Child Protection, that's me, is the central coordinating body. And we also have Ministry of Labor and Social Policy, Ministry of Education and Science, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Culture, Ministry of Interior. Interior Affairs, is this how it's called? Or just Interior?
Yeah.
Okay.
Foreign Affairs, but
Foreign Affairs is also Ministry of Foreign Affairs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Each mayor, we said, and the Agency for Social Assistance. But not the agency itself at central level, but its directorates at local level. So what is the philosophy here? For each and every case of a child, we always have at least 2 bodies responsible at national level that could always be found one hand distance from child's case. This is the philosophy of their decision-making process when we were deciding which bodies to be responsible. You see that the Ministry of Sport is not official body, but is also engaged in the national coordinating mechanism on children's rights. In it, we have more than 20 state administrations that are engaged, but these are the responsible ones. Thank you for your patience, for your support.